Every Pokemon is created with an incredible amount of detail. From height, to weight, to colors, to their stats, we know a whole lot about their physical attributes. But what if we used these attributes to compare and rank Pokemon types? After all, we have a lot of stereotypes about each of the 18 types. Dragons are strong, bugs are weak, steel types are heavy, fairy types are feminine, things like that. So I'm going to put them to the test. In this video, I'm going to compare all the Pokemon types in a bunch of different attributes and see how they stack up against each other. I'll be comparing physical attributes as well as a couple of other categories like catch rate and gender ratio. So let's start off with the category that would be most important for any dating profile: height. Pokemon heights can be a bit weird. Not just the fact that some of them aren't what you expect. Looking at you, Marchamp, you short king. But because of the way some of them are measured. In general, bipedal Pokemon are measured from head to toe, fish-like Pokemon are measured in length, and most Pokemon with wings have their wingspan registered as their height. Quadruped Pokemon are a bit more inconsistent though. Some are measured head to toe, but then you have cases like Furret. Wait a minute, 5'11"? That's as tall as Charizard. Well, Furret is actually measured by length. That's still a long boy though. Regardless of how they're measured, we have some generalizations about Pokemon types when it comes to height. Dragon types are big and scary, bug types are itty bitty, so do these stereotypes hold true? Yes, they do. Dragon type tops the height list with a whopping average height of 2.6 meters or 8'6", well clear of the second place Steel type at 1.6 meters or 5'3", and third place Ground at 1.5 meters or 4'11". The big outlier making the Dragon type so tall here is Eternatus, who is 20 meters or 65 foot 7 inches in its base form. That's not even counting its Eternamax form. Alolan Executor also drags the average dragon height up, just not to the same extent. Celesteela is the one bringing the Steel type average up at 9.2 meters or 30 foot. And Steelix is pulling double duty for both Steel and Ground, being the same height as Celesteela. Bug comes in as the shortest type with an average height of 0.8 meters or 2'7", followed closely by Fairy at 0.9 meters or 2'11", and then Electric rounds out the bottom three at 1.01 meters or 3'3". The reason these three types are so short is because most of their Pokemon are under 1 meter or 3 feet, and there's not a heap of tall Pokemon to help boost the numbers. For the Electric type, a lot of this comes down to how many Pikachu clones exist and the fact that they're all so small. If you took out all of the clones, the average height of the Electric type would grow to 1.07 meters or 3'6", and put it as the 5th shortest, above normal and grass. So heights weren't as exciting as I'd hoped, but surely weight will give us something interesting. Well, it does a little bit actually. The 3 lightest types make sense. Fairy is the lightest with an average weight of 62 pounds or 28 kilos. Bug is the second lightest at 71 pounds or 32 kilos, and Grass is the third lightest at 77 pounds or 35 kilos. The top 2 also make total sense. Dragon being the heaviest at an average weight of 425 pounds or 192 kilos, and Steel being second with an average of 384 pounds or 174 kilos, matches both stereotypes perfectly. But Ice being the third heaviest is a surprise to me. I expected Ground or Rock to be in the top 3 for weight, and they're both top 5, so they're not far off. But Ice beats them out with an average weight of 308 pounds or 139 kilos. Ground type's heaviest Pokemon are actually heavier than Ice's, but there are plenty of chonky legendaries bringing the Ice type's average up. The most notable being Glastrier at 1,763 pounds, that's 800 kilos, and then Glastrier again, in the form of Ice Rider Calyrex, who just adds Calyrex's 20 pounds to clock in at a total of 1,783 pounds, or 808 kilos. The other interesting nugget from looking at weight is that the Ghost type isn't one of the lightest. It's actually smack bang in the middle. The main culprit here is Giratina, who weighs in at 1,653 pounds, or 750 kilos, for its altered form, and 1,433 pounds, or 650 kilos, for its origin form. Dragon types truly only know how to bulk. Before we continue, I just wanted to clarify that when analysing this data, I only counted Pokemon with multiple forms as separate entries if those forms were significantly different either physically or in battle stats and were permanent outside of battle. So, for example, Altered Form Giratina and Origin Form Giratina count as 2 separate Pokemon because they're physically different, and all of Oricorio's forms count as separate Pokemon because of their different typings. But I didn't count battle-only forms. So Megas, Gigantamax forms, or things like Ash Greninja don't count as separate Pokemon. This was just to simplify the list a bit and avoid skewing any data with repeats. So height and weight went mostly as expected, but what about speed? What are actually the fastest types? Are the heaviest types going to be the slowest? The fastest types by average base speed stat are Flying with an average of 83, Electric with an average of 82, and Dragon with an average speed stat of 80. Meanwhile, Rock is the slowest with an average of 51, Ground is the second slowest with an average of 59, and Bug is the third slowest with an average of 60. These results are pretty much what you'd expect, but Dragon does buck the weight trend. Despite being the heaviest type by far, it's still top 3 for speed. Same with Bug. Despite being the lightest, Bug types are one of the slowest. But this matches up pretty well with what we'd expect from both types. What is a bit funny is that 2 of the 3 fastest Pokemon overall, Ninjask and Pheromosa, are both part Bug type. If there was a Pokemon type relay race, these 2 would definitely be crashing out because of how bad the rest of their team is. Let's keep moving into base stats and look at attack stat averages for each type. Starting off with physical attack, and there's no surprises here, with Fighting having the highest average attack stat at 104. Dragon is number 2 with 97, and Steel is in 3rd place with an average of 92. The bottom 3 are Fairy with an average of 67, Bug with 68, and Psychic with 71. Who could have foreseen this? The story is the same for special attack averages. Shocking absolutely no one, Psychic comes in at number 1, with an average special attack of 91. Dragon comes in at number 2 with an average of 90, and Fire rounds out the top 3 with an average special attack of 86. Look at the Dragon type being all greedy over here. Top 3 in both physical and special attack. The bottom 3 special attacking types are surprising, but also not surprising. Bug has the lowest special attack stat with 56, followed by Ground and Rock with 57 each. Ground and Rock make sense, most of these Pokemon have designs that imply they're physical attackers, and the strongest Ground and Rock type moves tend to be physical moves like Earthquake and Stone Edge. It's interesting that Bug has the lowest average special attack stat. There are plenty of strong special attacking Bug types, like Vikavolt or Frostmoth, as well as strong special Bug moves. But I guess the Bug type is filled with so many weak early game Pokemon with super low stats that it drags the average down so much. What's more surprising though, is that Fighting type isn't in the bottom 3 for special attack. Now, it does have the 5th worst average special attack, so it's not that far off. But looking at the Pokemon, it's propped up by some strong special attackers like Pheromosa, Keldeo, and Iron Valiant. Don't ask me why Pheromosa has a special attack as high as its physical attack. Someone please just give this lady some base points in defense. On top of that, there's just not as many fighting types with really poor stats, like there is with the Bug type. For the sake of completion, let's combine the physical and special attack averages to see which types are the strongest attacking types overall. Dragon comes in at number 1 with an average combined attack of 187. Fighting is second with 167, and Fire is third with an average total of 166. Bottom 3 are again Bug with 124, Normal with 133, and Poison with 142. Probably the most interesting takeaway here is just how built for offense the Fighting type is, since it's a top 2 overall attacking type despite its lowish average special attack. Now that we've covered some of the main stats, let's take a look at base stat totals and see which types are actually the strongest and the weakest. Things are shaping up to go as planned, but are there any curveballs to surprise us? Are Bug types really going to be the weakest and Dragon types really going to be the strongest? Yeah, okay, that went exactly as you'd expect. Topping the list with the strongest average base stat total is indeed the Dragon type, with an average total of 518. You can thank all the Dragon type legendaries and pseudo legendaries for this one. For my calculations, I found the average base stat total to be about 440. This might just be slightly below the true average base stat total for all Pokemon, just remember that I did take out the battle only forms. But if you look at the weakest fully evolved Dragon type Pokemon, which is Tatsugiri, it has a base stat total of 475. So even the weakest Dragon types are still above average. Steel types come in as the second strongest, with an average base stat total of 479, and Fighting types are third with an average of 471. Not super surprising, I guess. There are some really strong Pokemon with these types, and not an overabundance of really weak ones to bog the averages down. The weakest types come as no surprise either. Bug type comes in last with an average base stat total of 375. The most interesting thing about this is the gap between Bug at 375 and the second weakest type, Normal, at 401, which just shows you how far behind the Bug type is. Poison type being in the bottom 3 might be a bit of a shock, but it's easy to forget that Poison was quite an irrelevant type before Fairy was introduced. And a lot of Poison's strengths come from its offensive and defensive type matchups, rather than how strong its Pokemon are. You can see the rest of the list yourself, but there are a few interesting things I wanted to point out. Both Water and Grass are bottom 5 for average base stat totals, despite how prevalent starters are in these typings. Rock type is also bang on the average total at 440. So is Rock actually the most normal type? Huh? Ranking the different types by base stat totals went exactly as planned, but there are a few more attributes that we can look at. Let's start with catch rate. Each Pokemon species has a base catch rate that determines how easy or difficult it is to catch. The higher a Pokemon's catch rate, the easier it is to catch, with 255 being the highest. For example, Pokemon like Caterpie and Pidgey have a catch rate of 255, while Mewtwo and Beldum have a catch rate of 3, the lowest in the game. You can obviously affect a Pokemon's catch rate by lowering its HP, inflicting it with a status condition, and the kind of Pokeball that you use will modify the catch rate as well. But for this, I'm just going to be looking at the base catch rates. So which types are easy to catch, and which ones are hard? Shocking no one, our top 3 easiest to catch types are Normal, with an average catch rate of 122, Poison with an average of 118, and Bug with an average of 117. This is because of how common these types are on early game Pokemon that are designed to be easy to catch. The hardest to catch type isn't that surprising either. Dragon type comes in as the hardest to catch with an average catch rate of 47. Fighting type comes in as second hardest to catch with an average rate of 68, followed by Fire type as the third hardest with a 69 average. Nice. Dragon's catch rate is really skewed by the amount of Dragon type legendaries as well as pseudo legendaries that usually have a low catch rate of 45. If you removed all the legendary Pokemon, Dragon would still have the lowest catch rate, but it would increase a bit to an average of 57. So who's skewing the fighting and fire types? There's actually quite a few low catch rate fighting types. Galarian Farfetch'd, Haldean Tauros, and the Hitmons all have a low catch rate of 45. For fire types, it's mostly the starters bringing the average catch rate down. Most starters also have a catch rate of 45, making them pretty tough to catch when they do actually appear in the wild. A few other interesting low catch rate fire types are the Magmar line, Flareon, and Bailey Style Oricorio, who all also have a catch rate of 45. Let's talk about colors next. Each Pokemon has an official color in the Pokedex. A lot of them are pretty questionable. Looking at you, Mantine. Where is your purple? Is it in the room with us right now? But I want to know, do the official colors match up to the typings? Like, are grass types mostly green? Are water types mostly blue? Let's take a look. You're not going to believe this, but fire types are most commonly red, water types are most commonly blue, and grass types are most commonly green. And this holds true for most of the other types too. Their official colors line up with either the primary color that represents the type or a similar color that you would expect, like white being the most common color for ice types. But there are a few interesting ones to look at. Flying types are actually mostly brown, with 21 species classified as brown, followed closely by 19 blue Pokemon. This is probably because there are so many normal flying dual type Pokemon, and the dominant brown color from normal carries over here. Ghost types are actually mostly purple, with 14 purple Pokemon, but this is followed closely behind by 13 black and brown Pokemon. Bug types are most commonly red, not green as you might think. And it's not even really close. The only really fraudulent red bug types are Trashcloak, Burmy, and Wormadam, who should be pink. But the rest of the red bug types actually check out. Dragon types are actually most commonly green, not blue. Although it's pretty close. There are 17 dragon types that are designated green compared to 14 blue. So there weren't as many surprises with Pokemon colors as I'd hoped, but maybe the next category will change that. As you probably know, each species of Pokemon has a set gender ratio that determines how likely that Pokemon is to be either male or female. A lot of Pokemon have a 50-50 ratio, but there are some notable examples otherwise. Tauros can only be male, Kangaskhan can only be female, and all starter Pokemon notoriously have an 87.5 chance to be male, making female starters quite rare. So let's look at the gender ratios across each type. There are only 6 types that have a higher ratio of females than males: Fairy, Ice, Psychic, Normal, Steel, and Bug. Unsurprisingly, the Fairy type has the highest ratio of female Pokemon. But what is a little surprising is that the Steel type shows up as a female-dominated type. Well, only as 51% female, but that's still dominant. This is pretty much all down to the Tinkaton line being all female. Of the 4 female-only Steel types, 3 of them are Tinkatink, Tinkatuff, and Tinkaton. For our male-dominated types, the Fire type comes in at number 1, with a 64% male-to-female ratio. This is heavily skewed by having 32 Pokemon with that 87.5% male ratio. And like I mentioned before, these are all the fire type starters. Plus Pansear and Simisear, but those two are supposed to imitate starters. Coming in at 2 and 3 for male dominated types are Fighting and Rock. Fighting is no surprise. There are plenty of male-only fighting type Pokemon like the Hitmons and Gallade. Plus, like half of the fire starters are also part fighting type, so that helps skew the ratio for fighting. The rock type makes it into the top 3 partly because there are no female-only rock types to skew the numbers, but mostly because all fossil Pokemon also have an 87.5% chance of being male, just like the starters. Rounding out the top 5 male-dominated types are water and grass. Again, thanks to being heavily skewed by starters. On top of male and female Pokemon, we also have ungendered Pokemon. These are normally Pokemon based off of inanimate objects or materials, like Electrode and Metagross. And most legendary and mythical Pokemon also fall into the category of being ungendered. Psychic comes in at the top of types with the most ungendered Pokemon. But part of it is also because Psychic type is often added to these inanimate Pokemon to give them life, so to speak. Think about Pokemon like Lunatone or Baltoy. Next is Steel at number 2, with Pokemon like Magnemite and Bronzor. And the type with the third most ungendered Pokemon is Electric, another common type to be added to object Pokemon. The types with the least amount of ungendered Pokemon are Bug and Poison with the least, and then Fire and Rock are tied for third least. Rock is a bit of an odd one being so low. I would have thought there would be more than just 10 ungendered rock types, but there you go. So what did we learn overall? That stereotypes are actually true? That doesn't seem to be a good lesson to take. In all seriousness, I did have a lot of fun combing through the data to see if our conceptions of Pokemon types were actually true, even if the Dragon type kept showing up like a smug varsity athlete.
I wouldn't want to fight me neither.
If there's any other areas of Pokemon data analysis that you'd like me to get into, leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.